So before now coming to the second part of this presentation, I should actually highlight that SARDI, which is the South Australian Research and Development Institute, they had a vessel in the upwelling region exactly during this time in 1990. They did a measurements, luckily during an upwelling event. In this area, if you can see where the mouse is, in this area they did measurement. So we were lucky to actually have real measurements of our coastal upwelling, of the sea surface temperature, salinity, not only near the surface but also near the seafloor, and that comes into play now on the next slides. So let me just do some moving to the next slide, which is this one. Okay. Where does the upwelled water come from? That matters because the deeper the water comes, the greater the depth the water comes from, the higher is the nutrient concentration. If it comes from offshore outside the shelf break. You know, the shelf itself is relatively shallow, 100 meters or so. And now we're talking about where does the water come. And a way to actually estimate that is now demonstrated on this. On the left side, you have a temperature salinity diagram that shows you all measurements of temperatures and salinities in the upwelling region and in the upwelling center, the Eyre Peninsula one, below 50-meter water depth. Okay, each dot corresponds to a measurement. And from this, you can estimate what is the coldest water that you can find. And the coldest water that you can find has a temperature of about 12 degrees Celsius. So now you know that there is no local refrigerator in the sea that can produce this water. So this water has to come from somewhere. And now you can look at vertical profile measurements of temperature and salinity taken during the roughly the same time from outside the shelf break. And this is shown here over my shoulder. You see temperature profiles from the surface down. And this is from Richardson et al. 2009. And you can see the nitrate value actually. Okay, you can see this increase. And where do you find 12-degree cold water? It comes from 300 meters. And 300 meters must be a region away from the shelf break. Okay? So you learned something. You learned that the nitrate concentration is relatively high because the water comes from a depth of around 300 meters. This is the depth origin of the upwelling. That's not the end of the story because it's quite fascinating and not as easy as you might think. So let's have a look at the next other feature.